Welcome to the Real News Network in Baltimore. I'm Kim Brown. A routine media appearance on Fox and Friends by White House counselor Kellyanne Conway is raising eyebrows and has caused at least 2 complaints lodged with the Office of Government Ethics.
I do find it ironic that you've got some executives all over the internet bragging about what they've done to her and her line, and yet they're using the most prominent woman in Donald Trump's, most prominent,
right.
she's his daughter, and they're using her, who's been a champion for women empowerment,
Sure.
women in the workplace, to get to him.
Just,
so I think people can see through that.
30
go
seconds.
buy Ivanka's stuff is what I would tell you. I hate shopping. I'm gonna go get some on myself today.
There is that hashtag.
It's a wonderful line. I own some of it. I'm gonna give a free commercial here. Go buy it today, everybody. You can find it online.
All right. Kellyanne Conway from the Brief.
Yes, that was an employee of the White House calling for the public on a national cable network to purchase the goods of the daughter of the President of the United States. So did Kellyanne Conway break the law, or at minimum, did she violate ethics rules for government employees? And is this incident just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to this administration's habit of mixing branding business opportunities with the serious business of running the country? To discuss this further, we're joined with Craig Holman. He is currently the government affairs lobbyist for Public Citizen, serving as the organization's Capitol Hill lobbyist on campaign finance and governmental ethics. Craig, we appreciate you being here.
Glad to be here, Kim.
So, Craig, I mean, it seems slightly innocuous on its face, but when we look at actually what Kellyanne Conway did and said, and from the position in which she did that, it is certainly getting people upset and certainly looking at this administration further. But let's start off with how this all began. So Ivanka Trump being the daughter of Donald Trump, Ivanka has a clothing line, shoe line that is being sold in a number of retail outlets. However, earlier this week, it was revealed that the outlet Nordstrom decided that they were going to drop Ivanka's line. They say it was a business decision. It was due to poor sales. But this drew the ire of her father, the President of the United States. If we could take to that tweet really quick, where President Donald Trump himself said, "My daughter Ivanka has been treated so unfairly by Nordstrom. She's a great person, always pushing me to do the right thing." Terrible. Making this very much a political issue as he takes to this on his Twitter feed. But for Kellyanne Conway, the White House counselor, to be addressing the media with the White House placard behind her and encouraging the public to buy Ivanka's stuff, what do you make of this?
First of all, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. Kellyanne did violate federal law. There is an explicit federal law that applies to every employee of the government except the president and the vice president that prohibits the use of public office for private gain. That includes endorsing products, doing sales pitch for commercial goods, and that is exactly what Kellyanne did. So she did violate the law, and quite frankly, the White House concedes that at this point. However, really, in my opinion, the bigger story is the attitude and the tone that Donald Trump has set. Keep in mind, he's the one who began this when he started his tweeting yesterday condemning Nordstrom's for dropping Ivanka's clothing line. Even though that law may not apply to the president, we've got a president who now is mixing his business interests with his government service. We've never had that before. I mean, literally, even though these conflicts of interest laws may not apply to the president, every president over the last 40 years has complied with the spirit of it. They have gotten rid of their conflicts of interest, financial conflicts of interest, either divested them or placed them in a blind trust. They've complied with the spirit of the conflict of the interests code. The first president who has refused to do that is Donald Trump. And he even gets up there and proclaims that he can have no conflicts of interest because he's the president. Perhaps the law may not be enforceable against him, but he comes into office with more conflicts of interest than we've ever seen in the history of the United States. And his refusal to try to address those problems is setting the tone for the rest of the administration. What we just saw Kellyanne do is exactly what Donald Trump has been doing, except the law can be enforced against Kellyanne.
Indeed, and Craig, and I want you to take us through the process here because there's already been, at minimum, as far as I can tell, 2 complaints filed with the Office of Government Ethics. If we could take to that other tweet from the Citizens for Ethics, who tweeted that Kellyanne Conway just used the White House to promote Ivanka's clothes. That is not legal, so we filed a complaint. And we've also heard from the House Oversight Committee with the House Chairman of this committee, Republican Jason Chaffetz, along with the leading ranking Democrat on that committee, Congressman Elijah Cummings, sending a letter to the Office of Government Ethics, basically saying that, yes, Kellyanne Conway appears to have violated these federal rules for federal employees, and also saying that how this usually works for a person to be disciplined as a result of this is that it's recommended to the head of the officers or employees' agencies that appropriate disciplinary action be taken, such as reprimand, suspension, demotion, or dismissal. But in this case, with Kellyanne Conway being a direct employee of the White House, Donald Trump being her boss, it doesn't seem very likely that she will be reprimanded. So what recourse here does the Office of Governmental Ethics have in dealing with Kellyanne Conway violating these federal rules?
First, I want to emphasize, because that complaint filed by Chaffetz and Cummings, that means there have now been 3 complaints filed with the Office of Government Ethics, not just 2. And by the way, Cummings and Chaffetz were very adamant about OGE's got to step in here and try to make sure something's happened. They filed with the Office of Government Ethics, just like I did, because they fully understood that there's an inherent conflict of interest with Donald Trump. You try filing this complaint with Donald Trump or White House counsel, and you're asking Donald Trump to step in and intervene when it comes to his own daughter's business enterprise. You know he's not going to do that. And that's why we all chose to file with the Office of Government Ethics. And the Office of Government Ethics is actually a bit of a toothless dog. It really doesn't have any legal authority to make anyone do anything. But what OGE has done lately in the last several months is it has taken a public position to try to push and cajole and perhaps even embarrass the White House into doing what's right when it comes to the conflicts of interest. That's why we're looking for OGE. OGE is credible. They actually believe in ethics. And if they can take a public position and stick their neck out there again against the president, perhaps they can push the president and the White House and the entire administration, I want to emphasize, into realizing that we do have these very important ethics codes and that they should start respecting it. You know, it's getting really kind of embarrassing, I guess, is the one word I could use, to see that the White House is spending so much time peddling its own business interests, using public office to try to promote the Trump Towers, the Trump hotels, the Trump line, Ivanka's clothing line, which is manufactured in China, by the way, I want to add. I mean, we have a White House that it's difficult to discern what their priority is. Is the priority the business or is the priority public service? Hopefully OGE can push the White House into taking the correct stance.
So, Craig, I mean, looking forward here, who is going to stop Donald Trump? How is this administration going to be reined in? Because, as you said, not even 100 days in, not even 30 days into this administration, we have a long list of, at minimum, questionable actions and practices going on with this president. And even more so, as you said, a difference of how this family is approaching being the first family in a recently settled lawsuit with First Lady Melania Trump against a blogger in Maryland who had reported that Mrs. Trump had been working as a high-paid escort, a prostitute of sorts. And this lawsuit was settled in the Trump's favor, but one of the things that was cited on Mrs. Trump's behalf was that this smear of her allegedly cost her millions of dollars in marketing opportunities. And I'm not quite sure if we've ever seen or interpreted the role of the First Lady as an opportunity for financial enrichment. And that's just one example. And you talk about the emoluments clause of the Constitution, which it appears that Mr. Trump is in violation of in at least two ways, with his ownership of the old post office pavilion in Washington, D.C., which he turned into Trump Hotel, which sits on federal land. And so he is also leasing federal land kind of from himself. He's not supposed to be an elected official leasing federal land, and his failure to divest from his business interests is not putting them in a blind trust. So what can be done here? Is there an agency? Is there a branch of government that can step in? Because it doesn't seem likely that the legislature is going to do it.
That Congress will do it. At this point, Congress, both chambers are controlled by Republicans. And these Republicans have so far fallen in line behind Donald Trump. So it doesn't look likely that that the Republicans in Congress are going to step up to the plate. That leaves it to two different other elements to try to step in and get the White House back into doing its government duty. The first and the most important will be the voters. If we continue to complain about this and to get upset about all these business self-dealing opportunities we're seeing coming out of the White House and the entire administration, I may add, perhaps this is going to take its toll, and Donald Trump will start realizing that if he continues doing these type of self-dealing enterprises, that it's going to cost him dearly in the next election. So the voters are number one. The other element that could perhaps get Donald Trump in check when it comes to him selling his business through government office is the courts. There is a lawsuit that's already been filed against Donald Trump when it comes to the emoluments clause, claiming that he is violating the U.S. Constitution. And by the way, I want to emphasize, even though the conflict of interest statute itself may not specifically apply to the president, the Constitution does. And so this lawsuit is claiming that Donald Trump is in violation of the U.S. Constitution, literally asserting that we are in the middle of a constitutional crisis right now, and asking the courts to step in and intervene. So the voters and the courts, that's what we're counting on at this point.
Craig, I want you to sort of elaborate on that point, if you could, briefly, because during President Trump's very first press conference, he had something really unusual happen where he had one of his attorneys get up and not so much answer questions, but actually read a statement about how the president's business interests were not in conflict with his new role as commander-in-chief. And I mean, this is a thing, actually, where the president and the vice president have been sort of looped into this particular, clause that deals with conflict of interest. Can you make the distinction for us between that and what the Constitution actually says?
Well, the Constitution applies to receiving any kind of profits or commercial ventures or gifts or rewards from foreign governments. So that specifically relies on foreign governments providing money to Donald Trump. And with Donald Trump's vast global empire, in which he has some 500 businesses that he has stakes in, there are at least 23 countries where his businesses are very active. What we're seeing is a number of foreign governments deciding to take advantage of that, thinking that they can buy favor with our president. For instance, Kuwait was going to celebrate its National Independence Day over at the Four Seasons Hotel prior to Donald Trump's election. Once Donald Trump was elected, they canceled their Four Seasons events and moved it over to the Trump Hotel. Literally just for the intent of throwing money at the feet of the President of the United States believing that they can curry favor and access. That's what the Emoluments Clause is specifically designed to stop. Now, when it comes to the other conflict of interest code, that's federal law, 18 U.S.C. 208. And that's what Trump is continuing to declare, that he can't have conflicts of interest because it has been interpreted as not specifically applying to the president, even though every president before him has abided by the spirit of that law.
Indeed. We've been speaking with Craig Holman. Craig is the government affairs lobbyist for Public Citizen. He's also served as the organization's Capitol Hill lobbyist in campaign finance and government ethics. He deals with those issues. Craig, we really appreciate your time. I'm sure this won't be the last time that we speak with you about one of an issue like this pertaining to this administration. So we do look forward to speaking with you in the future about something similar.
Great pleasure talking to you, Kim.
You as well, and thank you for watching the Real News Network.